Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Kings, the 17th chapter. And here we start to see, things start to pick up a bit more, right, with the introduction of Elijah and, the prophecy that he makes, right, concerning Ahab and, the rest of the land of Israel. So let's get into it. And as we read in the previous chapter, right, we ended off with Ahab being the current king of the northern kingdom, and how he married Jezebel, and how he committed, far worse deeds than even all the previous kings before him. So that's the current king of the northern kingdom now, Ahab, and let's get into it. So this is 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1. And Elijah the Tishbite. Now, before going into this, right, just a quick, recap, if not, if you can't think of any other word here. But at this point in time, right, as we're going through the book of Kings, in terms of the overall timeline here, this is post Israel being delivered from Egypt, right, coming into the promised land during the time of Moses and Joshua, mainly Joshua, right. At this point, this is after the time of the judges, okay, and eventually right after that, you had Saul, who became king, which is around, you read about that in the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, and Saul becomes king, King David becomes king, and then leading into Kings is where we see the death of King David and the reign of King Solomon up until this point here, where you have the various kings of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom reigning here. Okay, so it is from here on, right, that eventually, the northern kingdom goes into captivity, right, under the Assyrians, and then the southern kingdom goes into captivity under the Babylonians, which is sort of around the time of the book of Daniel and Ezekiel and so on and so forth. All right, so just to refresh our minds on that as to where we are exactly. So 1 Kings 17 and 1, and Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead. Now keep in mind, right, the suffix "ite" means, like a people of or pertaining to, right? So here Elijah was dwelling, right, in the region of, I believe the land would be Tishbe, right? But as it says, he was of the inhabitants of Gilead, and Gilead is on the east side of the Jordan River, right? If we look up here, Gilead Bible map. Yeah, so here's a nice quick look at it here. So you have, even though this is like a more of a modern, like you look at the modern names here, this is still geographically pretty accurate. Yeah, here's another one here too. You can see Gilead over here. And pretty much, yeah, this is going. So Gilead is on the east side of Jordan, right? And then you have the Ammonites and Moabites south of it, and so on and so forth. Okay. Anyway, so it says here, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, as the Lord Yahweh, God of Israel, liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. So what did Elijah do here? He basically said, you're not going to get any rain or dew, which is going to lead to what? Droughts, famines, for X amount of years until I give the word for the rain to come down. So he basically like cursed the people, right, or cursed the land. And the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto him, saying, get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. Okay, and Now, what's interesting about this is, let me see what the other translations say. Right, so NLT says, go to the east and hide by Kerith Brook, near where it enters the Jordan River. So like I said, what's interesting about this is, it says here, right, that he was of the inhabitants of Gilead. But it could be that, let's actually look up Tishbe map, or Bible map. Let's see where exactly that is, or at least an approximation of where they put that. Yeah, okay. So they have this, once again, this is just another estimation, right? But they have Tishbe around here. Okay, this is probably the Jordan River here, and this is the Kerith Brook. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, being of the inhabitants of Gilead, obviously Ahab wasn't dwelling on this side, right? Ahab was somewhere around here, probably in Samaria, right? If my memory serves me right. So it would make sense that for Elijah to be able to tell Ahab what he did, he had to cross and go there to talk to Ahab, right? And if you look at a map here, you can almost even see, I don't know what this is supposed to be mapping exactly, but anyway, it looks like it might be Elijah's journey. So from Samaria, right, the Lord tells him to go to where is that? That brook, Cherith, that is before Jordan. Okay, and if we look that up, see, once again, this is just going to be an approximation, that whatever map you see here, whatever dot they show on here, it's going to be an approximation, if we can even find one of those. Okay, let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of movements going on here. Anyway, so coming back here, so let's say that Elijah, we know that he was of the inhabitants of Gilead. That's east of Jordan, right? But in order to give this message to Ahab is on the west side of Jordan, right? Probably around Samaria. So he has to go there. He gives the message. Then the Lord tells him, look, you got to get up out of here. Go back towards the east, right? And there's a brook, Cherith, that is before the Jordan River. Go over there and, hide over there for some time. Okay. Verse 4, and it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So you're going to be good. You just hide over there in terms of like what you're going to eat. Don't worry about it. You're going to be good. And this is a good example, right, of, for example, what Yahushua was saying in Matthew 6, right, getting to the last few verses about take no thought of what you're going to eat or tomorrow, or what you're going to wear, because the Most High already got it covered. And here's a good example. He's telling Elijah, go, I've already taken care of like how you're going to eat and what you're going to drink. Just go. And that's that faith that you got to have, that, you know what? I don't know exactly, because up until this point, I mean, Elijah didn't know this was set up for him, right? And in this time, as things get hectic, we're not going to know what is set up for us, but we just have to trust that if we follow the primary focus or commandment of the Lord, everything else would sort itself out in our favor. So, verse 5, so he went and did according unto the word of the Lord Yahweh. For he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. So whatever kind of meat, and whatever kind of bread, they brought it. However they brought it. So you can imagine, right? Probably wasn't like cooked meat, roasted, toasted, whatever. At that point you just start a fire and go ahead and do what you got to do, right? So this is interesting here. Verse 7, and it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Because remember, he basically made that prophecy or that curse. So eventually that brook also dried up. No additional rain was coming in there. so the water just starts to recede more and more and more, and then boom. So you can imagine at this point, that if this brook is dried up, then there's probably some worse cases going on there in the land of Israel itself. And the word of the Lord Yahweh came on to him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, so in the region of Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So pretty much Elijah was sort of on the run, but also in hiding, because what do you think Ahab would have wanted to do to him? All right. So the Lord was protecting him, giving him the heads up. All right, go over here for now. Okay, now you need to go over there, and I've already set things up for you. Just go. Verse 10, so he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate, now let's look up that location, right? There we go. Pull up the map. And okay, this might not be too bad. Yeah. So you can see they place it right somewhere around here, right within that region right there of Sidon. So he's, if we assume he's somewhere around here, he has to go all the way north over there. Okay. And this is also that previous diagram we saw before where they placed the brook over here. But, like I said, these are all approximations. Anyway, he has to go all the way up there. So he goes, right? Verse 10, so he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel that I may drink. He was probably thirsty. It's a long journey. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. So, why are you getting that water? Bring me a little something to eat too. And she said, As the Lord Yahweh thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but an handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. So kind of like their last meal, because there's a famine, right? There's nothing going on. You can't get any more resources. Her last meal that she's going to use to prepare that bread or whatnot, that meal, that's all she got. So in her mind, it's like, yo, once we run out of this, hey, it's in the hand of God from there, because we're pretty much cooked. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not. So you notice how Elijah wasn't panicking. It wasn't, oh my gosh, what? Oh, it's over. Why would the Lord tell me to come here? And the lady herself doesn't even have enough for her and her family, let alone me. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not. Go and do as thou hast said. But make me therefore a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son. So no, you good. Don't worry about it. But still, you make me a cake, and then after that you can make whatever you're going to make for you and your son. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, until the day that the Lord Yahweh sendeth rain upon the earth. Now, what it means by waste, meaning that it's not gonna, it's number one, it's not gonna go bad, and number two, it's not gonna run out. So it's gonna be preserved. Same with the oil. And you can probably imagine the tiny barrel that she has, or whatever, however much she has left, if she, scoops out and makes the food, when she comes back, it's probably still the same amount in there, right? Like you're just scooping and scooping and scooping, and it's not running out. Same with the oil, you're pouring and pouring and pouring, and it's just not, like, imagine you have a water bottle with like half of it filled with water, and you're just drinking and drinking and drinking, and then when you look at the bottle, it's still half full, filled with water. and you're just pouring and pouring and pouring, and then you look at the bottle, the water is still half in there. So I mean, it could have been something like that. And in a case like that, that'd be pretty cool, right? You can imagine probably as you're pouring, the elements that are forming the water are duplicating, right? They're like, those elements are replicating themselves just as fast as you're pouring. So it's like you pour and there's more, you pour and there's more, and this is something the Lord can easily do on our behalf in this time as well. And that's why you don't have to stress, or worry or lose your mind. How are we going to do this? The Lord has many, many, many ways of preserving your life, as we're seeing an example here. So this is what Elijah tells the widow woman, and she believes him, right? And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah. And she and he and her house did eat many days. So they were good. They were able to survive. They were able to eat, as it says, many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord Yahweh, which he spake by Elijah. And it came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick. Now keep in mind, this is over the span of not 1 or 2 days, right? Many days, probably a year or two, right? That they're living and eating and good. Everything is good, right? And then one day, the son of the woman falls sick, and his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And to put it plainly, take the NLT for example. Sometime later, the woman's son became sick, and he grew worse and worse, and finally he died. NIV, same thing. He grew worse and worse, and finally stopped breathing. Okay, so in this case, you can imagine it's not looking too good here. And she said unto Elijah, What have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? So she knew he was a man of God, but she basically was like blaming him, right? She thought that it was because Elijah came over there that her son died, right? Meaning that she knew, okay, I'm not perfect, but this whole time you came here, was it just to like bring judgment upon me, for something that I might have done in the past, and now, my son is dead. So, and you can imagine, obviously, she's not sitting there with a smile on her face, speaking in a low tone as she's saying this. Her son just died. So you can already imagine she's probably crying. She's probably stressed. She doesn't sound too happy or calm about this. And he said unto her, Give me thy son. One thing you can imagine is maybe he wasn't even there. Maybe Elijah was in another part of the house, and then her son is not doing too well. They knew that he was sick, and then maybe one day he passes away, and then you just hear this loud scream or this loud crying, and then boom, you go and pop in on that and find out, the son is gone, and the mom is not happy. And he said unto her, Give me thy son. And he took him out of her bosom and carried him up into a loft. Right, so she's probably holding on to him because, once again, that's her son, right? She's very scared and upset. So Elijah takes the son and carried him up into a loft where he abode, and laid him upon his own bed. So Elijah took the body of the child, put him upon the bed. And he cried unto the Lord and said, O Yahweh my power, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourn, by slaying her son? And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried unto the Lord Yahweh, and said, O Yahweh my power, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. So pretty much revive him, right? Bring him back to life. Now I just want to look at this word stretched here. Madad, it says to measure, to extend, to measure. So let's see how they word this in some of these other translations. Yeah, I mean, it's still the same thing, right? He stretched himself out over the child 3 times. He stretched himself out over the boy 3 times. Yeah, so you can just imagine, like, he probably put his hands where the child's hands were, and so on and so forth, right? Um, and in any case, he's praying to the Lord to bring the spirit of the child back into him. Now, the stretching himself upon the child 3 times part, maybe this is something the Spirit told him to do, right? And it's kind of like similar to Yahushua, like how Yahushua spat in the mud and then rubbed it upon the blind person's eyes and then they could see again. It's one of those things where it's like he probably could have just said it or just tapped him on the forehead and then he would have been fine. But it's like one of those like signs, right? But it's interesting because it's not a sign that's just like, if some random guy was blind and you just went and spat in mud and rubbed it on his eyes, that wouldn't make him see again, right? So, I guess you can probably throw it in there as for dramatic effect. One other example I can think of is what was the case? It was just in my head. It just escaped my mind, but I think you should understand where I'm going with it by now. So in any case, right, he stretches himself upon the child 3 times. He cries unto the Lord and prays for the Lord to bring this child back to life. And the Lord Yahweh heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down out of the chamber into the house, and delivered him unto his mother. And Elijah said, See, thy son liveth. And the woman said unto Elijah, Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and that the word of the Lord Yahweh in thy mouth is truth. Now, once again, you can imagine she probably didn't say it in the same tone that I just read it, right? Because I'm just narrating this, but she's probably very happy. She probably screamed or something, and she's just like, oh my gosh, maybe tears of joy. This is her son's life we're talking about here, right? So you got to really imagine, in a practical sense, a woman who and she's a widow, right? And she loses her son, and then, now he's back to life. Obviously, she's going to be happy about that. So in any case, this brings us to the end of the book of 1 Kings, the 17th chapter. So we see, sort of like the introduction here of Elijah. And there's also a lot of like lessons that can be learned from this chapter, right? The little faith boosters here and there, showing how the Lord, examples of how the Lord preserves, right, and protects and takes care of, his servants. Case in point, Elijah over here, right? And even the benefit of the widow woman here having helped Elijah, because what would have happened if Elijah hadn't showed up over there? She probably would have ran out of food with her and her son, and then end the story. But hey, as the scriptures say, the Lord will have mercy upon whom he will have mercy. So Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.